give us your assessment of how you think the city of Calgary is doing in responding to the TRC?
I believe that the city, and particularly our Calgary Urban Aboriginal Affairs Committee, the Aboriginal Urban Affairs Committee, CAWAC, really did an exceptional job in the crafting of the White Goose Flying report. And I'll remind you that White Goose Flying was the last name of a young man who died at a residential school in Calgary. But it's time for us to go even beyond that. And the way that the news of this 215 children has hit people is giving us an opportunity to say, look, let's just stop for a minute and put aside the politics of reconciliation and what we believe, and just remember these were kids. These were small children. They were taken from their families as young as 3. That happened here. And no matter what pretty reports we've got, we have to recommit ourselves even more strongly to true action. And so I'll be looking for a conversation with council next week to really talk about how we can accelerate the work that we have set out to do in White Goose Flying. Symbolic stuff matters. You know, we have a permanent Treaty 7 flag in front of City Hall. We've got flags inside the council chambers. We renamed a bridge to the Reconciliation Bridge. We'll have Indigenous art banners, and they are beautiful, going up across the city over the summer. But we got to do more than that. We've got to really look at this all through an anti-racist lens. We've got to look at it all through ensuring that we are doing work to gain prosperity. You know, one thing that we don't talk about much is that in the midst of all this regional debate that we've been having with the region around us, years ago when I first became mayor, Calgary quietly extended clean water servicing to the Tsuut'ina Nation. I was shocked that schools on the Tsuut'ina Nation, on the boundary of Calgary, they could be in Calgary, you couldn't drink from the water fountains. So at least we were able to fix that in our own small way, and we will continue to figure out ways that we're going to be part of the solution.
Is there anything that you can do besides what you said this morning as far as the naming of the 2 schools in Calgary? Is there anything else can be brought down?
You know, I feel like the time for process and procedure is long past. Now, you don't want to do things without deep and authentic conversation with Indigenous peoples. This can't be things you, even if they're well-meaning things, they can't be things you do to Indigenous communities. They have to be things you do with Indigenous communities. But that said, I really do believe that, and I'm calling upon the Calgary Board of Education and the Calgary Catholic School Board to make a statement, and do it now. Just say, as an act of reconciliation, we are renaming these 2 schools. We don't know to what. We're going to work with the community to figure out the best way to do that. But we recognize the harm and the hurt that is being caused. Now, Bishop Grandin School is a school where many members of the Tsuut'ina Nation go. And you're sending them to a school named after someone who did that. And this isn't hard. It's not hard. It doesn't take that much political courage. And I really would call upon my fellow elected officials at the 2 school boards to make that symbolic move now.
Was there a discussion about renaming the schools and then granting those names?
There was.
Why wasn't it done at the same time?
It's a good question for the Calgary Board of Education. One would have thought that we would have given them a very easy opening. But for some reason, they didn't take that opening.
Random question, are you aware of any ground penetrating radar exploration around the residential squares in Tsuut'ina, or any sort of findings around that?
I'm not. In fact, I didn't know anything about ground penetrating radar, even though it was in the Truth and Reconciliation Commission report, until this weekend. But certainly bringing some comfort to families is important, because when you read about what has happened in so many residential schools, folks were told the kids just ran away or they went missing. And in almost no cases, in fact, it was official federal government policy that even if you told the parents their child had passed, you didn't give them the chance to return that child's body home for burial. It wasn't a cost the government was willing to take on. And so these parents didn't get to bury their kids. And in some cases, there were unmarked graves. And I think it is an investment that is well worth it for us to bring some closure to these families.
Sir, I hate to ask you about the judge.
The what now? It's all done. I never have to talk about it
I was
again.
gonna say, so rescinding the bylaw, what does this mean for the guide for local area planning?
It means that the Guide for Local Area Planning is exactly that, a best practices guide for local area planning. And it will be used as a guide in consultation with communities to develop better plans for their own communities, plans that these communities have been waiting for. Yes, I suppose I really messed up some people's political aspirations by actually making it clear to citizens what we were doing. And I found it fascinating that Councillor Farkas did a 180. We actually gave him what he was asking for, and he said, well, I don't want that. This is even worse, which pretty much shows that he had no intention of actually doing good policy here. He was just looking for a political crutch, and now he doesn't have it.
So then you set the record straight. Did council blink or gone ahead anyways?
Council did exactly what council should have done, which is encapsulate best practices for redevelopment of existing communities, plans that neighbors have been asking us for many years.
So not dead.
Not even a little bit.
The Beltline pools discussion, can you clarify what came out of this one?
Yes, I can. So, council made a historic commitment to create a new family recreation center at the site of the Repsol Center, which will continue to be a great high performance space, but it will now include amenities for kids and for families in a better way. That's something that the volunteers and the staff of the Repsol Center have been pushing for since the day I became mayor. And so I'm really happy that they've done that. In Inglewood, we had promised the community a year to use it or lose it, but they didn't get a chance to use it because of COVID. So now they've got a chance. So when that pool reopens this summer, Inglewoodonians use it and prove that it is a loved facility and that we can get more people coming through that facility. As for the Beltline, long consultations with the community really came to the point where we said we probably don't need a pool there, but we probably need some sort of a community facility, including the existing gym. And so we're going to keep that, the non-pool amenities, we're going to reopen those. And again, we're going to spend a year determining what's better for that. And then there was this mysterious amendment number 4, about which we will talk more in June.
Speed limits have been reduced starting today.
Correct.
I guess how much preparation gone for that, and what's the measure of success?
Well, the ultimate measure of success is lower collisions and lower injuries. So it'll take some time to see if that actually happens. My colleagues did a great job on getting the signs up, so I'll just remind people what this means. If the street is not otherwise posted, the speed limit is now 40, not 50. And that means when you're in a neighborhood, when you're on a residential street with houses on it, the typical speed limit is 40. For bigger roads, collector roads, roads with a line down the middle, or roads with bus stops, in many cases that road remains at 50. So I live on a busy street in my neighborhood, which has the bus route on it, and that road has been re-signed for 50. Though it has so many playground zones, you can't get up to 50 anyway, but of course playground zones continue to be in effect.
I'm wondering with a bunch of different topics.
It's okay.
The COVID relief that we discussed earlier.
Mhm.
$2,500 for relief. I guess can you talk about what that's going towards? Because I know some people say, well, not nearly enough based on all the loss that we have.
Yeah, no, it's definitely not going to make up for all of your loss. And even in terms of the federal and provincial programs, it's not as much as them. But it is important. And for a lot of these very small businesses, that little bit will help them with their relaunch costs. That's in addition to the things the city has already done around deferring taxes and utility payments, and around getting rid of business permit fees for a couple of years, getting rid of business improvement area fees. But the idea here is that there's 2 parts that will be proposed to council this afternoon or tomorrow. Number 1 is that we were giving the hotels what they're asking for, which is a very reasonable request, which is the ability to pay their taxes without penalty in next year instead of this year at the end of 22. And then we're going to have a small grant program, and those of you who've been around for a long time will know that we've talked about business grant programs for a long time. And the idea here is, I don't know if the number's been finalized. Did they finalize it at 2,500? It was still going around on the weekend.
Yeah, in the agenda, it's just flat.
Okay, so it's a flat grant for restaurants, for nightclubs, and for fitness facilities, which is just a cash check. We're not going to ask you what you're going to do with it, but to help you with your reopening and relaunch costs. And I think particularly for a lot of smaller businesses, that will be very welcomed. You know, although we did a lot of stuff, for example, for a lot of restaurants, very little of that would have touched restaurants in Northeast Calgary, for example, you know, small family-run restaurants. And so for those folks, I sure hope that the council passes this, and I sure hope that it makes a difference for them.
What's the timing on that, council?
I believe that we want to have all the applications in either by the end of July or the end of August.
And I don't think there's probably much discussion about whether the ones that are on the list should be on the list, but what about other types of businesses that might feel like they've suffered as well? I think a lot of the personal services that have been closed have
Yeah. We did a ton of analysis on this, and where we really ended up was those businesses that had never been fully opened were the ones who were on the list. You know, personal services, unfortunately, had to yo-yo back and forth, but at points they were able to pretty much just open as normal, just with masks. Whereas restaurants have never been at full capacity, nightclubs have never been open, and fitness centers have never been at full capacity. Okay.
Just in terms of the COVID discussion, you said you were concerned that people might get the message that the second shot isn't as important. What's the city's role in emphasizing that people still need to go out and get their protection?
Well, let me start here. Get the second shot as soon as it is available. I am telling you that the moment they say that I am available, that I am eligible as a member of Phase 2B, I will get it that day. The second shot is critical to protect yourself against the variants. And while there is considerable protection with the first shot, and if we receive 70% first dose, then it is actually reasonable and prudent to open things up, as the province is saying. We really, really need people to get the second shot over the summer. So the goal has to be to have 70 or 80% of Calgarians fully vaccinated, first shot and second shot, by the time school starts again in the fall. All right, thanks everybody.